Return of the Costume Curse. Time passed. I had now moved on to junior high school and rode the public bus downtown to school. By the age of 13, I had ceased pretending to be Roy Rogers' horse Trigger and had moved on to more advanced fantasies like being Errol Flynn's next girlfriend. In other words, boys had become interesting to me for reasons other than besting them at football and wheedling them into lending me their BB guns so I could do some target practice. The day the secret of my terrible past returned to haunt me began much like the day before. I rode the bus to school, did what I was supposed to do, and after gathering sundry books, dirty gym clothes, sewing class project, purse, and so forth, struggled to the bus stop. I managed to squish myself and my impediment aboard, along with quite a large number of my classmates. After some time, various exits eased the press. I was able to sit down at last and arrange my belongings a little better. Then I noticed two very exciting things. A certain young fellow that I had quite a crush on was right here on my bus and standing right in front of me. Be still, my heart. And seated to one side of me was another very cute boy who was staring at me with undivided attention. How interesting, I thought to myself. This may be an exciting ride home. Little did I know just how that excitement would play out. If I had, I probably would have leaped screaming out of the nearest window. After quite a while of observing me keenly, handsome boy number 2 leans over and drawls casually, "Aren't you the girl whose pants fell down that time at recess at West Central School?" Lauren Bacall, or Errol Flynn's latest girlfriend, might have been able to toss off a snappy comeback. All I could do was blush, hang my head, and nod miserably in the affirmative. To this day, I have no idea why I didn't deny it, or somehow creatively avoid the issue instead of just confessing. Naturally, this was a source of great hilarity to my classmates who were still on the bus. I wanted, of course, to die on the spot. And my number 1 heartthrob had overheard the whole conversation. I just sat there numb with misery, and then brightened a bit when I realized that I could flee at the next stop. I had no idea that the goddess of clothing catastrophes had a few more tricks yet to play on me. I noticed my stop was approaching, so I pulled the cord that indicated I wanted to stop at the next corner. The bus obligingly began to slow, and I gathered all my paraphernalia in preparation for my escape. Heartthrob number 1 was standing directly in front of me. As I began to stand, the bus gave a tremendous lurch, propelling me with the speed and accuracy of a guided missile directly into the derriere of my hero. He flew across the bus with a grace highly unusual for an adolescent male, and managed to remain on his feet. He turned and scowled at me. In my confusion and dismay, I dropped all my belongings at his feet and began a garbled apology, and then I noticed that a very elderly gentleman was attempting to exit the bus at this stop, and that he'd somehow become entangled in my sewing project, which was marching down the bus aisle attached to his left foot. I tried calling out to him to explain his condition, but he was very elderly and very deaf as well. So I was reduced to following him and grabbing for my project. This was largely unsuccessful and resulted in my snatching at the clothing, his foot moving forward in a perfectly choreographed sequence that went something like this. I leap forward to grab my sewing project. His foot swings forward and I miss. This produced a kind of hopping dance all the way down to the front of the bus, with me calling out at the top of my lungs, "Mister, please wait, you're caught in my homework." Fortunately, I was finally able to get his attention by grabbing him by the trouser leg, yelling directly into his face, and communicated my desire to retrieve my sewing project from his ankle. By this time, we'd arrived at the doors of the bus and descended. My cousin, who had been the delighted witness to this many humiliations, followed the elderly gentleman and managed to trip and fall face down onto the pavement. This was too much for my already overloaded adolescent nervous system. Instead of inquiring solicitously if she had broken any parts of herself, I simply began to laugh hysterically and couldn't stop for some time. I sat on the curbside, tears rolling down my face. My cousin lay wheezing beside me. The good news is she was completely unhurt. The bad news is that she's never forgiven me for laughing, and I never got a date with either of the boys.